You know, it's interesting how we forget history because we aren't paying much attention. But let's talk about toy guns. Now, there's people who say that we need to take guns away from even law-abiding people because it will lessen the chances of a bad person getting a hold of a gun. Of course, we know that's completely ridiculous, right? But that's under the guise of safety. Did you ever see any of these states or cities that were trying to outlaw toy guns under the guise of safety? Again, saying that toy guns exploited children to creating a fascination with guns, so we need to get rid of them. And then looking at the few instances where children had toy guns and were shot and killed by police because they believed the guns were real. Even though we get this image of this innocent child running around with a toy as opposed to a gang-infested area with a child who acted like the gun was real. You know, statistics can easily be manipulated. But let's talk about toy guns, because I tell everybody that about 85% of what anybody can learn about the handling of a real gun can be done with a toy. When people talk about training children with a gun, they say, what gun should I get them? I say, a toy. You see, the beautiful thing about children, especially when they're very young, earlier than the age of 6, if they are taught about guns with toys, they just learn. Their mind is a sponge. People say that it's the truth. They learn quickly. Well, think of this. The first time a father whittled a toy gun out of a piece of wood, do you really think it was just so the kid could run around and act like an idiot? Do you really think that father, who most likely was a gun owner himself, didn't take the time to say, okay, see this piece of wood that I've whittled into a toy rifle? You think he didn't teach that child how to hold that rifle, the stance to make, how to place his trigger safely, how to take a shot, how to utilize platforms to lean on while shooting? Of course he did. Toy guns started out as a training instrument, and now people have lost sight of that. See, we don't recognize the importance of toy guns because now they're just a toy. But really, it's the greatest way to teach a child, because you can teach almost everything with the exception of actually firing around. And that can be taught easily later. But you can get down the most important aspects, which is safety, and then grip, stance, functioning. I mean, everything involving a gun with the lack of shooting a bullet can be taught with a toy. And understand this, it's not dangerous. And understand this, children can play with them constantly. And by playing with them, they're training with them. See, it's just the idea of little boys and even little girls playing soldiers, right? Playing war, and people say that's so terrible. You see, they learn tactics, they learn patience, they learn everything about handling firearms. And then when a parent says, listen, this is how you do this and this is how you do that, they train that way, they play that way. By the time they pick up a real gun, they know not to point it at people, not to put their finger on the trigger. And then it's pretty easily explained of the difference between a real gun and a toy. Even Wyatt, at the age of 4, could tell me the difference between a real gun and a toy by its texture, its weight, its appearance. Let's face it, there are people out there that say that training children with a toy is wrong. Well, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Because my 7-year-old master shooter, who was doing incredible things at the age of 6, is because he learned for years on toys. Toys are important. Toys teach children about firearms, and it gives the opportunity for parents to safely train their children about firearms and to talk about the history of firearms in the country. How with firearms, we formed the country, we've kept it safe, people have put game on the table, and people have defended their families. And of course, it's always held off invasion, the ownership of firearms in our country. Toy guns are important, and they're the best way to teach a child, and even an adult who's never touched a gun, the basics, at least of safety, with a firearm. Keep safe.